Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Leadership in Politics with Dr. Abraham. My guest today is Dr. Risa Stein, a professor, an entrepreneur, a clinical psychologist, and also an author. Her insights will be shared with all of us. Risa, welcome to Leadership in Politics.
Hey, Abe, it's nice to actually meet with you and talk face to face.
I know, this is wonderful. So, how are you doing in this uncertain time?
I'm doing well. We got a new puppy a couple of weeks ago, so that has broken up the monotony and the boredom of being at home all summer.
That's beautiful. That's wonderful. They make your day, don't they?
They do, and keep you on your toes.
Yes. So tell me a little bit about yourself. Introduce yourself to our audience.
I'm a clinical psychologist. I've been working in academia for the past 22 years. I was working in the VA system for my postdoctoral fellowship in Oregon. Did my VA internship in San Antonio. I ran the smoking cessation program for basic military training for the Air Force for a number of years. I'm married. My mother lives with us. We live in Kansas City. I have two wonderful kids. My son is a software engineer for Geico in Kansas City, and my daughter is a junior in high school.
That's wonderful. So you're an author. Is that that's something to do with the psychology? The book. What's the book all about? What's the premise?
So the book, if I can plug a little bit, the Best Damn Life Workbook was actually an outgrowth of an experience I had in 2012. So it occurred to me then that I had to make some changes in my life, and I started searching for how I could do that. And I came across some really great pep books, pep talk kind of books, how The Subtle Art of Not Giving Up, really fun books like that, but they didn't really address the deeper issues that I had. And I looked at some of the research literature, because I'm a researcher at heart, on depression and anxiety, and there wasn't a whole lot written about it. And so I felt like after a lot of introspection, I understood what I needed and what I was going through. I'm a clinical psychologist. I did years and years of cognitive behavioral therapy, but there wasn't anything out there. So I started documenting my process of introspection, trying to figure out why I had this chip on my shoulder, what I needed to do in terms of scaffolded steps to get myself out of this hole that I felt like I was in. And then interviewing other folks, talking with folks who had been through something similar and what their challenges are. And so I created the book in terms of what I would do if I were counseling somebody who really felt lost in their lives, like they felt like they were leading an inauthentic life, or their lives were for somebody else. One of the characters in my book is Jack, who followed the steps and did everything right and felt like he woke up in somebody else's crappy B movie. That, he had a great wife, a great job, but none of it felt meaningful.
There are stories in the book so they can relate to people reading it.
So there are three main characters. Jack, who really was fine with his life, except this one area of his job that just wasn't personally fulfilling. Marin, who is, and they're all kind of amalgamations of clients that I had seen or people that I know. Marin, who is merely more akin to one of my college students who has been going through the steps. Mom and dad said, this is what you should do, so they're doing it. They didn't really know what else was out there, so anything's as good as anything else. And then me, where everything was always a carrot. It was always the next destination, the next degree, the next honor, the next this is this, and not really stopping to smell the roses or really enjoying life. And so the exercises in the book address why we internalize certain messages that set us off on the wrong trajectory. Mm-hmm. And then how to cope with vulnerability or invulnerability. Vulnerability was a really tough one for me. Risk and failure aversion, and imposter syndrome. And then working through all of those, what do you do when you finally reach the point where you're comfortable with yourself and you don't have these walls in front of you anymore, but now you don't know where to go? So I help people in the book really understand what are things that are life sustaining for them, what are things that are drudgery, And what are things that you sort of have to do, but you know, you just how to get through them, like going to the dentist, because you just have to. So we talk about 4 different life paths and how to explore each to figure out which one would work best for you, and then how to develop your life path in a way that's authentic and specific to what makes you happy.
So in a way, you're providing sessions of psychology, of training to the readers as they go along reading your book.
That's a good way to put it. Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
They're becoming their own counselor. It's a personal development. I'm just kind of their guide, but they're really going through it and figuring it all out on their own.
But you're also a professor of psychology as well.
That's correct.
What have you been teaching?
I've been teaching since 1998. So I've been teaching intro classes, abnormal health psychology, counseling and psychotherapy, creativity, innovation, a whole host of different topics. And it's interesting, one of the chapters in the book is about finding what you value. And I have a few stories in there about working with my classes. I've started now asking them at the beginning of the semester, what is it you value? What is it you want to get out of your education? How will you know if you've been a successful student? And then making sure they return to those measurements throughout, because so often they just try, you know, they give the teacher what they think the teacher wants, right? Rather than really using education as an exploratory period. It's college is the safest space they can be to experiment and explore. And so often they're just so ready to, you know, go, get A's, and get the degree and the job. And they don't use the time for personal development like I wish they would.
Which is, if they do use it, it will be more beneficial than just be a typical student looking for the A without looking for the experience. Is the learning experience.
It's such an amazing time for cognitive growth and exploration that you know, it was me. I did enjoy college maybe a little bit too much, but you know, if they use that time to actually explore and grow and get to know people and develop relationships rather than simply studying, you know, I have a post on LinkedIn about the in praise of the B student. And I find that so many of my students who are willing to make Bs but are willing to take risks are the students who end up really getting what they want, getting what they need out of education. And it's a far more fulfilling experience for them.
That's very good. That will build their perception, reality as well as perception. That will build their curiosity.
Mm-hmm.
That will make them more involved with the subject or topics that they are studying.
And empathy too. And empathy is a big part of that. If they don't open their eyes, they're not going to become empathic.
So Then let's talk about vulnerability a little bit. Leaders, I always ask this question, why leaders, they don't want to be looked at as vulnerable? Why do you think is that?
I think Brene Brown said it really well, that we always assume that other people will interpret our vulnerability as weakness. But when we see other people being vulnerable and saying, I was wrong, or I don't know, or crying because something sad has happened, we look at them and we don't say, oh my God, what a wuss. We say, well, that takes a lot of courage to express yourself, or to say that you were wrong, or to say that you don't know. I think that in the US in particular, we have such a norm of strong independence. And in some ways, our society is moving even more towards that it's difficult, particularly in competitive times, for somebody to say, I was wrong, or I don't know, because I think they believe that opens up the opportunity for others to say, okay, well, this other person then, clearly they know everything. They're the one I want to work with. When we all know, you don't want to work with the person who assumes they know everything. So I think we're conditioned and we're trained that way. And there are some generational differences, but we're training our children, from what I've seen in the colleges.
Accept it and just realize it's okay. It's part of life. You can make mistakes. It's not weakness. We're human beings. We have limitations.
Exactly.
Tell me about your new venture, Aamica. What is it? What's the purpose of it?
I'll step back a little bit and tell you how I got to the point of creating Aamica. I decided that I would go back to school. We have a wonderful business school at my university, have wonderful colleagues there. So at that same time, part of my exploration in terms of getting out of my box was to get involved in creativity and innovation. And I got really into design thinking. Started thinking about, what are the pain points? This is about when I redesigned and restructured my classes. So I had all of that going on. And then I went to the business school and learned a whole lot more about business function. And really what I learned is that oftentimes working in organizations is like doing family therapy, just on a really grand scale. And the leaders are the parents. And if they don't behave like responsible parents, that the rest of the family is going to descend.
That's interesting, because coming out of your perspective as a clinical psychologist, somebody else will not look, somebody else will not look at it that way.
Perhaps not, but it sure seemed that way to me. So I started getting into the entrepreneurship stuff and thinking. We also started a chapter of Active Minds on campus, which I was faculty sponsor for. And the students were really wonderful. They were very open. They were very vulnerable. And at one night, they held an event called Be the Light, where several students got up and shared their first-person testimony or journeys with mental health. And so then I started thinking about, from a design thinking perspective, what are the pain points for students to share their stories? And why is it so hard for students to share their success stories or their coping stories in support of their friends? So I developed a mental health nonprofit website based upon what I saw as the pain points of these students. So fast forward a couple of years, a gentleman, Rick Nash in Australia, who had developed a platform that involved a wearable device that when scanned would share some psychosocial information about an individual. And we were introduced, he saw what I was doing with the nonprofit mental health website for students, and we just started talking. So after about a year or so, we started coming up with some ideas of how we could address mental health. And I was thinking of it from a design thinking perspective in terms of what I experienced when my son went off to college and how to address his needs. And if it was up to me, I would have called him every 15 minutes and said, how you doing? How you doing? Are you studying? Are exams okay? Do you have a girlfriend? All of this. And it would have been overwhelming. And so I had to restrain myself so as not to drive Justin insane. At the same time, he wanted this measure of support from his mom, but he wanted to be independent too. So he didn't want to have to call me and say, Mom, I'm struggling, which he did every now and then, to his credit. But so we started thinking, how can we design something that addresses those pain points? I was down in Australia in March, and right when Tom Hanks was hospitalized and all the COVID stuff was crazy. And so we were preparing for the launch, and we were going to prioritize these intimate connections like parent to child or spouse to spouse or best friends. And when we started seeing all of the stuff with people coming outside and, clapping for the nurses or for the healthcare workers when the shift changed, teachers trying to move everything online and the burdens on them, we realized that the compassionate thing to do, and the platform is all about compassion, the compassionate thing to do would be to flip the script and then go with the community support. So we developed a way for all those people who wanted to come outside and clap, but were sheltered in place, who couldn't hug a hero, to be able to provide a virtual hug. So the other part of the challenge, as you and I were talking about before, is we have this feeling of we can't be vulnerable. So, sometimes healthcare workers are the last ones to actually ask for help. So how do we provide them preemptive or proactive compassion? And if you think about it, in our society, we don't do that very well. If you've suffered a loss, a loved one died, or you just came home from the hospital, the individual who says, give me a call if you need anything, that's great. But the individual who comes by unprompted and delivers you a casserole, or just sits there and holds your hand and listens to you cry, that preemptive and proactive compassion, that's what we're missing. So what Aamica does is we provide a platform for individuals who want to share that compassion, who want to be a force for good, a way to upload multimedia messages to a hero, COVID-19 hero group, because we figured the compassionate thing to do would be to provide this level of support to the people who need it most right now. And then we provide these bands. They're stretchy. They're the thank you bands, and they have our logo on the inside, the little connected hearts. And they're produced by Zox, so a plug for Zox in LA. And they're embedded with an NFC chip. So when you download the app and tap the band to your phone, you get all of these multimedia messages of support from people all over the U.S.
How do you identify the frontliners?
So right now, we sell packages that come with a set number of contributor accounts and bands. So if you're a principal at a school, you're the head of a trucking company, you are a CEO or an administrator at a hospital, you can purchase a package that comes with a certain number of contributor accounts and a certain number of bands to provide your employees. Or, you know, if you're an insurance company or electronic medical records, you know, you can purchase them for the individuals who are closest to you. The other way we do it is through nominations. So right now, nominations for principals and teachers for bands for their schools. And then we go out and we find community partners who want to provide that level of support for the COVID-19 heroes. The other way we're doing this is as a fundraiser. And when those people purchase a contributor account, that money goes into a pot that can then be used as a fundraiser for a school, things along those lines. So
that's very good. So these messages can be, the messages can be customized to whatever you need them to, right?
So we have 4 basic hero groups that we're working with right now. And those are supply chain and delivery folks, food and retail folks, healthcare and support staff, and educators and their support staff. So when you purchase a package, let's say you purchase for an extra large organization, which comes with 1,000 contributor accounts and 100 bands, your bands can go to a particular organization, or you can just put them into the pot and say, I don't care where they go, just, you know, to send them to teachers who need them. But each band goes to a particular hero group, and that hero group will receive all the messages that everyone around the country shares with that particular hero group. So if the San Francisco 49ers decide that they're sponsoring nurses at or healthcare staff at a hospital, and folks in New York City decide that they also want to support healthcare workers in a hospital in New York, those 2 sets of hospital workers all will receive all the messages. So we bundle them all together. So you know that you have a huge community out there that is supportive of you. And rather, even though you call them up on your phone when you tap it to the band, we all know our phones are sources of stress and social media is disingenuous and inauthentic. But the band itself comes to signify those warm feelings. So sort of in a Pavlovian or conditional classical conditioning manner.
Yeah.
Right. This becomes a positive conditioned stimuli. So all you have to do is look at it then and you feel good. And we're hoping to provide that level of proactive compassion, but we're also hoping to shift community views and mores towards providing that level of compassion and seeing others as fundamentally good, which
what do you call that band? What is it called?
This is our thank you band. And so all of the folks that we're working with right now who receive a band will receive one like this. And down the line, we'll be able to use these in therapeutic situations to provide psychosocial or socio-emotional support for people who are going through drug and rehab, drug rehab or drug and alcohol rehab, weight loss, physical therapy. I mean, you name it, personal coaching. Anytime where you don't want to have to necessarily say, did you take your 4 vitamins today? But you want to say, you know, look, I hope you're having a good day. So it increases engagement and morale and motivation.
And the potential of it is very good too. So really, it has multi-use driven purposes, not only COVID-19. Now it's
Oh,
COVID-19
right,
because it's only COVID-19. And it
right,
makes sense to use it at this time. But really, as you educate people more about it and introduce it to the market, it has different purposes and it will be used differently. Because I'm gathering, as you try to explain, it's not only sports, it could be used in houses of worship, could be used in
oh,
organizations,
absolutely,
could be used anywhere.
right.
You wanna support your people and let them know that we're thinking of you. Probably you
Well,
should
I'm
call it
glad that's
thinking.
intuitive to you, because
Yeah.
yes, that's exactly where we're going
Probably
with it.
you should call it thinking of you band.
Yeah.
Something like that.
Well,
That's
maybe the
really
next one will be.
that's very
Uh,
impressive, right?
you
I'm happy that we had this talk because I knew you're doing something special and you've always done something special, but this one has really it's a purposeful mission that you're not
right,
only helping an organization or your company to make a living, but also you're helping others to feel good about themselves. And hopefully
right.
this thing will be not only this future adventure you have, not going to be only USA, it could be really international. How can people connect to you? What's your website? How do they reach you?
Right now we're at, well, we will be and continue to be. It's Aamica, AAMICA.org. We are a for-profit, but it is a social venture, so it is a .org. That's our main site, and when you go up to the top of the page, on the top right, you'll see the thank you campaign. And there you can purchase the bands. We're working with Apple right now. They've thrown us a few hurdles in our way, so we can't download the app on Apple right now, but that should be coming in the next month or two. It is available through Android. The store is open. The nomination process is open. So if you have a group, a COVID-19 hero group you'd like to nominate, you can do so that through the website as well.
Okay. And your book, where can they find it?
I just realized the other day you can get it on Walmart and eBay
Oh,
and all sorts of places, but it's on Amazon.
Amazon.
Um,
The primary place.
and if you just search Best Damn Life Workbook,
Much success to you. Thank
thank
you.
you.
Anything else you want to add?
Thank you for having me on. And it's wonderful that you and I have known each other for a few years now. It's great to actually hear your voice and to connect with you this way. I
Same.
appreciate the platform.
You're welcome. You're almost welcome. I knew you have something special, and I wanted to share that. And we wanted to share that with our audience. And I hope it does bring more attention to the good things you're doing.
Thank you. And thank you for all the good work you're doing as well. It's been a pleasure.
Likewise, you be safe now.
You too.